Antonelli goes from P17 to a podium and doesn't get driver of the day, and McLaren get a double disqualification. Hey guys, Jay here, and this is my F1 fantasy team for the Qatar Grand Prix. Let's get into it. So, as you can probably tell guys, not very happy this weekend. So for Team 1, I had Mercedes, McLaren, Norris, Antonelli, Sainz, Bearman, Colapinto, a measly 81 points with a 2.1 budget rise. I made 3 transfers trying to set up for Qatar. I brought in Antonelli, Bearman and Norris for Verstappen, Russell and Bortoleto. Ended up being a mistake, a negative 34 due to the disqualification. And of course, a negative 66 for my ×2 since I no longer had Verstappen. And a 4,000 place rank drop just above 20k. So not good at all. For Team 2, Mercedes, McLaren, Norris, Antonelli, Sainz, Bearman, Gasly, 79 points this time with a 2.7 price rise. 2 transfers this time, so I'll have 3 transfers for Qatar. Verstappen and Russell to Antonelli and Norris, negative 64, and again negative 66 for my ×2. 2,000 place drop, and it was the same for Team 3. Again, I ran the same team: Mercedes, McLaren, Norris, Antonelli, Sainz, Bearman, Gasly. So again, 79 points, 2.7 price rise. A negative 48 this time. Again, I'll have 3 transfers for Qatar, but it was Gasly and Norris for Verstappen and Bortoleto, so negative 48. And again, negative 66 for ×2, and another 4,000 place rank drop. So yeah, not a great weekend. I was trying to build some extra budget going into Qatar, putting my bets on Norris, didn't pay off, making Brazil a long distant memory. Looking at the elite data, the chip in play this past weekend would have been autopilot, and there was 22.6% of teams that played the chip. In terms of drivers, Max Verstappen was the top pick, 88.2%, 50% of teams bringing him in, with 83.4% making him their ×2, with Lando Norris all the way down in 10th. Only 15% of teams, with 50% of teams dropping Norris. In terms of the constructors, the 2 top teams were Mercedes and McLaren still. However, 27.2% of teams did drop McLaren, with 15.6% of teams bringing in Red Bull, 9% of teams bringing in Ferrari. So, early thoughts. Lando Norris, do I think he's a sell? Well, it honestly depends on your budget. I think if you can keep Norris and bring in Verstappen, then that is the play. But even though he's only $1 million dearer than Verstappen or thereabouts, it is going to be a case of wait and see on free practice. The McLarens should be strong in Qatar. You could do, for example, Norris-Russell, which is something I could do for my team 2. But I think unless you can get to Norris and Verstappen, you may want to look to build your team around Max. So in terms of form-wise, I would say Max is definitely the better of the 2, but then we have to take into account the disqualification, otherwise it wouldn't be as severe as it looks. So it's very close still in my opinion, but I would say going on form, I would probably favour Max, but it's going to be tight. You can see here on the statistics page that Verstappen is just a point ahead of Norris on average points. Just on that, in terms of, we would usually run, for example, Russell with Verstappen or Norris, but don't rule out Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc actually came second in F1 Fantasy last season for Qatar, so he could be a very strong pick this weekend. So don't rule him out as a possible second driver if you've got that kind of budget. We're going to be looking to use the 3 times chip this weekend in Qatar if you still have it. My team 1 and 3 has it, my team 2 doesn't, unfortunately. But extra DRS will be the chip to play in Qatar. Gunning all for the points, so you definitely want to try and get the 2 best A drivers you can get in your team. Now, for those on lower budgets, don't rule out Kimi Antonelli. He's been on fire lately. That's why I brought him in for Vegas, because I wanted to try and build some extra budget, but I also thought he could bring in some points. And he did, to be fair, given that he started P17. Why he didn't get driver of the day, I'll never know. But don't rule out Antonelli if you've got a lower budget. And also don't rule out Oliver Bearman, who is another great pick for those on lower budgets. Both Kimi Antonelli and Oliver Bearman are the top 2 drivers outside the top 6 in terms of fantasy points scored this season. So let's look at the budget builder. Now, really you want to be going for the points this weekend as much as you can, but if you need to build a little bit of extra budget for the finale in Abu Dhabi, in Tier A, your top picks are Verstappen and Russell. Again, it's a sprint weekend, so there are more points on the table, but those are the top 2 picks for Tier A drivers. For Tier A constructors, it's Mercedes, Red Bull and Williams, but you don't really want to be running Williams, so it's either Mercedes or Red Bull. Otherwise, Ferrari and McLaren will be for points. In Tier B, Antonelli is covered for a DNF. Hadjar, Behrman, Sainz, Ocon, Gasly, Hulkenberg did really well in Vegas, and Lawson. The only thing I would bear in mind is that for Ocon, Gasly and Lawson, their points from Vegas will drop off going into Abu Dhabi, so they would be likely sells. So if you take them out of the equation, you're looking at Antonelli, Hadjar, Behrman, Sainz and Hulkenberg, and actually possibly Ocon as well, because 9's not too bad going into a sprint weekend. The Tier B constructors, this will be if you can't get to 2A constructors. HAAS and VCarb are the best for your price rise and possibly your points. Now, in terms of chips, everything's on the table. If you've got it, you might as well use it. But my favourite would be the extra DRS. Again, whatever you've got 2 races left. You might as well use it if you feel it's necessary. So everything is on the table. So where does that leave me with my teams? Well, Team 1's not in the best position. They've only got 2 transfers and their budget is not good. The only thing I'm considering doing right now is dropping Norris, Antonelli and Behrman and bringing in Max, Russell and Hadjar. Now, the trouble is this will cost me a -10 and I've already made 3 extra transfers this season. So I'm already down 30 points on transfers, but it is literally the only 2A or 4A build, I should say, that I can see myself making. So it's not the best situation to be in, but it's just a case of sacrificing an extra 10 points. Now for Team 2, they have 3 transfers, but they don't have the ×3 chip because I've already used it. Now, the 2 drivers I would definitely consider dropping to make the 4A build is Behrman and Antonelli, just because obviously they're the most expensive. Now, I can't get to a Norris Verstappen build. I've only got 3.3 in the bank, so that's a no-go. So I can do Russell, and I can keep Behrman, or which would be all my budget. Or if I want to save a bit of budget, I could go down to say like a Hadjar. And if I was to do that, can I get to Leclerc? I can do Leclerc. So I could do something like that. Otherwise, I'm looking at a Verstappen Russell build or a Verstappen Leclerc build. In fact, can I keep that? I could even do that. I'm not against that. Verstappen, Leclerc, and keep Sainz, Behrman, and Gasly. And that's only 2 transfers as well. That's only 2 transfers, so I'm not against it. Piastri is an option if I do sell Behrman, although I'm not confident on Piastri at the moment. I mean, I could go Ocon or Hulkenberg as well. So they're options. So I do have options, I just don't have the ×3 chip, unfortunately. Now, Team 3 has 3 transfers and does have the ×3 chip, and it's a similar situation. They've just got a little bit less budget. So again, it'd be Antonelli and Behrman. I could do, say, a triple McLaren with Hulkenberg or Ocon or Hadjar. Again, I can't, unfortunately, do what I want, which is Norris and Verstappen. But again, I could do Russell, and then that way, then again, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, or I can go to Leclerc. Let's say Hadjar. Otherwise, Verstappen, That leaves me 10, so I could keep Bearman. So I'm in the same boat as Team 2, only this time I do have the times 3 chip. So that's where my thoughts are going into Qatar. Now, if you're here in the UK, it's back to normal for us. It's going to be afternoon sessions. So practice 1 is at 1:30 on Friday with sprint qualifying at 5:30. Remember, you don't have to lock in your teams until after sprint qualifying. On Saturday, we've got the sprint race at 2, qualifying at 6 o'clock. I will be missing the sprint race because I'm going to be out. And then the race on Sunday at 4 o'clock. Weather-wise, I'm recording this on Monday, so this is how the weather looks as of Monday, the 24th of November. And as you probably would expect, it should be nice and dry, pretty hot. Obviously, there was heat concerns last season, but in terms of our picks, we should be fine. Last season's top 12 in F1 Fantasy was Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri, Zhou, Norris, Russell, Sainz, Gasly, Magnussen, Alonso, Bottas, and Lewis Hamilton. Now, in case you missed it, so after the Brazilian Grand Prix, like the other weekend, Sainz called for an urgent meeting in relation to racing guidelines. Sainz, who is a member of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, said that the 10-second penalty given to Oscar Piastri in Brazil was unacceptable, and that the incident in which Piastri and Antonelli collided, pitching Antonelli into Charles Leclerc, was not Oscar's fault at all. He added, everyone that's really raced a race car knows he could have done nothing to avoid an incident there, and he got away with a 10-second penalty. It's something that I don't understand. Sainz also brought up a bunch of other incidents involving himself with Liam Lawson, as well as HAAS's Oliver Bearman and Antonelli in Austin. He said, I didn't understand my Zandvoort penalty, and I didn't understand why Ollie got a penalty when we both collided in Monza. He was not deserving of that penalty, and I told him straight out of the race I didn't understand how I caught a 10-second penalty in Austin, and then the Brazil situation. There's been not one but multiple incidents this year that for me are far from where the sport should be. And so the drivers will be meeting with the stewards from the FIA this weekend at the Qatar Grand Prix with what Alex Albon calls the list. Talking of drivers' views on Formula 1, Max gave his thoughts the other week. He thinks there should be less races, not so many street circuits, a straightforward calendar, 2-day race weekends, no sprints, 1 practice and 1 qualifying, and a race. Sticking with BBC Sport, Toto Wolff sold a stake in the Mercedes F1 team. He sold it to American billionaire George Kurtz, who is the founder of cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which is a sponsor of Mercedes, as well as the main sponsor for the 24 Hours of Spa in the GT World Challenge Europe. It's a 5% sell of the team, equating to around $300 million, so £230 million, with Toto Wolff staying on as team principal chief executive officer. In other team principal news, there was a rumour that Christian Horner will be replacing Andy Cowell at Aston Martin, and McLaren have started what people are calling the Ella Development Programme, welcoming Ella Stevens, Ella Lloyd and Ella Hakkinen to their driver academy. Ella Hakkinen, the daughter of course, the legendary Mika Hakkinen. In other FIA news, they succeeded in a summary judgment application against Felipe Massa. Felipe Massa taking the FIA to court over the 2008 championship. That being said, Felipe Massa has been allowed for unlawful means conspiracy claims seeking damages to proceed to full trial on narrowed grounds. In other racing news, Dorian Pan became the F1 Academy champion this past weekend in Vegas, and Mick Schumacher, the former HAAS driver, has exited the Alpine World Endurance Championship Hypercar Team program, paving a way for a potential seat in IndyCar next season. AutoSport are holding their first ever Creator of the Year award. There's 9 nominees, and forgive me if I mispronounce anyone, but the nominees are Lissy McIntosh, P1 Matt and Tommy, James Coker, Kirif Kalarai, Arava, Tiggy Vallon, Christina Rocky, Eric Estep, David Land, and Misha Chaldron. The only ones I'm personally familiar with are P1 Matt and Tommy, Arava, and Misha. And I think I've also seen Christina a few times. But if you want to go and vote, I don't know if the voting's still open, but I'll put a link to this tweet in the description below. And if you're an anime fan like me, Yuki Tsunoda was asked by Crunchyroll what his favourite anime watch list would be. And he said Naruto, Attack on Titan, One Piece, Major Second, Overtake, Ace of the Diamond, and Boruto. Finally, guys, in grid rivals, I again didn't have a great weekend. 730 points, a £600,000 price drop. I had Gasly, Verstappen, Colapinto, Norris, Piastri, Red Bull, and I dropped down to 10,000. So about 2,500 to 3,000 places in the rankings. And that is it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not feeling great, so I'm going to have a lot of editing to do because I've made quite a few mistakes. But anyway, good luck for this weekend in Qatar, and I will talk to you real soon to discuss our plans for Abu Dhabi, the finale. Good luck. Let's go.